trying to decode today. And for that, we'll start in a couple of minutes. So the flow of the webinar is going to be such that initially we'll be going through something like a panel discussion where we've gone through all the questions that you've sent us through the Google Forms. And we've selected a couple of those, and we'll be answering questions, or we'll be just going through the entire discussion that we have to decode what is going on. And after that, we'll take live questions from the audience and answer a couple of questions that you have. The main idea behind this has been that last year, when we were preparing for this exam, we would have wanted something like this to happen. So we have structured in according. Is my voice not audible for everyone, or is it fine? I saw a chat saying that it is.
It's audible.
Cool.
It's audible. Yeah.
Okay. So I think it might be on your side. So just check if you can use speakers or earphones. But basically, last December, what we would have wished for from our toppers or from people who would have the guidance that we would have required, that is what we aim to do in this webinar. So things like what our journey was, how we planned our marks, what we were feeling, what we were going through during this entire phase, all of that. So that is what we're trying to do. So I think we're ready to go. I think we should start off with that. So why don't we start off with Ankit Thakker? Let's go with what your exam journey was like. Did you focus on CAT, CET? What was that like? Just one request, please keep your videos off, because it becomes a little distracting if the participants keep turning the videos on. So just make sure your videos are off. We can see all of you here. We'll be interacting with you in the chat, and keep your questions to the end. We'll have the live Q&A session at that time. So just keep the questions for that time. We'll sort everything that is there. So let's just start with Ankit Thakker. He is our rank 2 of this year, so it'll be interesting to find out what he has to say. So what's your exam journey like? Did you take CAT, CET? What was it like? What was your focus? Just whatever it is, let's hear it.
Hi. So this was my second attempt at CET. Last year I had got a 99.93 and I had missed out on JBMS by 2 marks. And yeah, this was my second attempt and I managed to get 99.99. But my focus was not only on CET. I did focus on all other MBA entrance exams, CAT and CET and all the others. But yeah, made it through CET. So yeah.
Okay, that sounds nice. So Aditya, what was yours like?
Hi everyone. So this was my second attempt at CET. I had scored a 99.75 percentile in the CET last year. This year I took all management entrance exams like CAT, ZAT, IFT, CET, and managed to crack CET and get through to JBMS.
Okay, that sounds good. I think we have a really interesting story coming up, especially with the people who've taken CAT this year. So Harsh, we'll hear from you now.
Sure. Hey guys, my name is Harsh. I was a final year student when I attempted for all these exams, and it was my first attempt, obviously, because I was a final year student. Even I had actually attempted all the other exams like CAT, ZAT, IFT, NMAT, and finally CET. Coming from CAT, it did not go that well, and then the journey started off learning from your mistakes and getting all the right things in place, and finally could make it big in CET. So yeah, that's a glimpse of the journey.
So if you could give any message to all the people who have taken CAT right now and are feeling demotivated, what do you think that would be like?
Of course, I know it has been exactly 1 week. I believe last Sunday was CAT. It's fine if you mess it up. I messed it up big time in CAT. I did not achieve what I actually wanted to. But it's a learning journey, right? You learn from your mistakes. You identify what went wrong during your exam, like on the day, and you learn from it, and try to implement whatever you have done in your subsequent exams. And that's how you'll make it. Like the final aim is to get into one great college, right? Everyone wants to achieve that. So for you have to identify what mistakes you have done, work on them, and then everything will go right if you put in the right amount of efforts.
That sounds good. So Shreekanth, we'll hear from you now. What was it like for
Yeah,
you?
sure. So my experience was a bit different from others. So in my final year, there was an option where to go after your BTech. Like you can go for an MTech, for an MBA, or for a master's in US. So for me, what I chose, most of my friends were choosing MTech, and that's why I also joined the GATE ka class that year. So what happened was I went for GATE ka class and I enrolled in a GATE coaching institute. And 1 week before the GATE exam, like in February, I came to know that you need at least 60% in your graduation so that you can do your MTech in IITs, right? So I had 57% in my graduation. I was not very smart or studious kind of a guy in my college days. So then I quickly gave CET ka form was also there at that time. I gave CET 2018. though I wouldn't count it as my first attempt. Then after in 2019 CET, it was my first attempt. I gave it after preparing a lot, and finally in 2020 I ended up with 99.96.
It's a very different story over there, very different from what our prep was. Vidhan, we'll hear from you.
Well, hello, people. This is my second attempt as well, like others, for CET. And during my first attempt, I had scored somewhere around 99.87. Just this close to JVMS, but of course not as close as Ankit's. And at that time, I didn't give any other exams, but this time I did appear for other exams like CAT, IFT, ZAT. And I think it helped me with my CET preparation as well, and could make it this time to JVMS. Yeah.
Okay. So we've quite a diverse set of experiences over here. And to add to that, I'll just tell you about me. For me, CET was the only focus. When I took the test, it was only CET. I did not attempt CAT. I took NMAT because it was all speed-based. It was mainly only the speed-based exams for me, and CET was the main one. That was my only focus till the end of it. And that is like, I wasn't like them. I didn't have a second backup that, okay, I can do this or something else. It was just one thing for me, and that's it. So what we're trying to show over here is that you can be at a very different point in December. Each of us was in a very different point. Some of us had taken CAT, we were demotivated after CAT. Some of us didn't take CAT, we were focusing only on NMAT, CET, etc. So we all come from different things, but what matters now is the next 2-3 months that you have in hand. That is what is going to make the difference. And to discuss that, let's just look at when we started the prep, because one of the questions that we kept receiving was, is it too late to start prep? Is it still fine if we start prep right now? What is that going to be like? CET is supposed to be in March, so we have around 3 to 4 months to go. So with that in mind, we'll start with Ankit. Ankit, when did you start your preparation? Of course, since it was a second attempt, let's talk about when you started off this year.
Yeah, so I started my prep in around mid-December. So like, as I said, I was giving the other B school exams as well. So IFT was done in the first week of December. And right after that, I had started my CET prep. I think mid-December on the whole is a good time to start with CET prep. So yeah, I had started around that time.
Okay, Vidhan, we'll go for you next.
Yeah, so last year when I was preparing for CET CAT, not for CAT, but for CET, I had started somewhere around January. And this time also, after CAT and other exams got over, I started preparing in January. And yeah, that was when I actually started focusing on CET, learning the shortcuts, the different types of questions of CET. Yeah.
Correct. That makes sense. So essentially, I think most of us would have, like, the core CET prep had started much later on compared to everything else. For the most vivid example, let's hear from Harsh. What was it like for you?
Sure. So my CET specific preparation actually started towards the end of January, basically the last week of Jan. I finished that, then I went for a college trip, final year, so you want to enjoy also a bit. Went for that trip, came back, and then I started with CET. But the good thing was that I was done with my basics. I had got my fundamentals covered, so that helped me a lot. Now, starting in Jan, my first week, I just revised everything because after a break, you actually need that boost to again get into that momentum. And after that, I started giving mocks. The main aim over here was what the difficult part over here was the shift from complex concept-based questions to that speed-based test. So what helped me was identifying all those shortcuts or making those shortcuts and tricks for myself, which helped me sail across through the CET phase. Yeah.
That makes sense. Aditya, what was it like for you?
So I had given CAT, so my basics were clear, but CET focus prep I started in the first week of December, and preparation started with the types of questions that are exclusive to the CET, like abstract, thread puzzles, input output, and verbal, very specific to CET, which is not that complex as CAT. So it more or less started in the first week of December.
Okay, that sounds good. Shreekanth, we'll hear from you.
Yeah, so for my first attempt, I started preparing on 4th of Feb after my NMAT interview. So it was only 30 days for in the last attempt. But this year around, I started in mid-December.
I think we've lost his voice. I'm not sure. Okay. Can you repeat the last part, Shreekanth? We couldn't hear you.
Yeah, so this year I started in mid-December, and last year it was only 30 days. So this year it was very chilled out. So I was giving mocks and doing analysis. That's it.
Okay, that sounds good. So as you can see, most of us had quite a late start towards core CET prep. And one of the reasons is because we had the concepts cleared. And even if you're in a state where your concepts are not clear, the first thing you have to do is go for those concepts and clear them. Because once you're there, I think it's quite a smooth sailing journey if you're working hard and diligently. For my part, I started my core CET prep somewhere after around the time NMAT starts. So it was around September, October that it started. It was simultaneously doing that with NMAT. So it was around that time. So again, that was obviously before December, but I still don't think it was that much a difference because all of us have reached the same point in the end. So that's the answer for you guys. Now, another common question that we've got was, how do you manage it with work? Right now on the panel, we have 6 of us, and out of that, 4 of us were doing it with jobs. There were only 2 of us, Harsh and I, who were freshers. Everyone else had some work ex going on with them. So let's try to decode what that was like, how they removed maximum time for prep, because it's not easy. It's not at all easy. You have to put in hours and you have to put an effort into this. So let's just hear from them what their ideas were of how to, remove the most time that they could. So we'll start with Ankit. What is it like for you?
So yeah, so I had given 2 attempts. My first attempt was with work while I was working, and then I left my job after my first attempt. So my second attempt was without work. So there's a contrast in that itself. And so during my first attempt, I used to find it very difficult to study after my working hours because it used to become quite hectic and it was not easy to retain information. So my schedule during that time was that I used to come back from home by around 8 p.m. And instead of sitting to study, I would have my dinner and sleep off immediately. So like around 9 p.m. and then wake up early in the morning to study, which was like around 4:30 a.m. So that routine, I think, worked for me well. And yeah, now this time I was not working. So I had a fixed schedule and I had regulated hours of studying.
Okay. In your experience, do you think it was better to go for someone? Is it better to leave WorkX, or what is it like for you? Do you think it made a big difference, or was it your prep that mattered more?
Yeah, I think it's my prep. See, it doesn't matter. Like even on this panel, we have such a diverse panel. Some people work, some people while studying in their final year, they got in. So it does not matter whether you're studying while working or whether you leave your job to study. I think it's your own prep and your own hard work that ultimately makes the difference.
That makes sense. Let's hear from the other panelists. Aditya. Now, Aditya is someone who is working full time along with CET. So let's just hear what he has to say.
So I had joined my job right after college in May itself. And at the start, I could not prepare anything because it was very difficult to shift from that student life mindset to corporate mindset. So there was very hectic training, and the hours was also pretty hectic. It was around 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. So I did not get time at all in the initial stage while I was getting adjusted. After a few months before CAT, I started studying at night after work. So I used to study from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And in the weekends, I used to give mocks. I did the same for CET, just mocks on the weekends and 2 hours of study on the weekdays. But it's okay if in some periods, let's say quarter ending period or some busy business period, if you're not able to put in the hours, try to make it up for the week in the weekends, and always take leaves before the main exam is coming, maybe 2-3 weeks of leave. So take that well in advance so your leaves are approved. And you'll have to make some sacrifices, like if your office colleagues are going out after work, you will have to sacrifice that and come home and study. So with all that, it's definitely possible to manage with a job and even a hectic job.
That's good to hear. I'm sure a lot of people will be feeling relieved by hearing that. Just one heads up to all the participants, please take notes of whatever you can. There'll be a lot of things that we're discussing in this. So if whatever is possible, just keep some notes of them. So that will help you out in the future, whenever you need to refer to it again. Shreekanth, what was it like for you?
Yeah, for my first attempt in 2019, what I did was I took 3 weeks off from my office. So I did not go for 3 weeks. And for the whole 3 weeks, as I said, I prepared for around 30 days and I gave around 63 mocks during that time. So the whole day I used to prepare. So I guess around 2 mocks I used to give per day, and equal amount I used to do it for analysis, and after that clearing concepts. So I would say around 14 hours per day for 30 days straight for the first attempt. And in the second attempt, it was quite chilled out. I used to give 1 mock on an alternate day. So I was pretty confident about which section should I tackle first, what were my strengths and what were my weaknesses. So in my second attempt, it was not very hectic for me. I was very chilled out, and maybe that was the reason why my exam went very well in the second attempt.
That makes sense. I'd just like to point out one thing that he said. He said he took 63 mocks in 30 days. I think that is something that very few people can do, because it's not easy to constantly take mocks, and that explains a lot about why he's made it to where he has. So that is great, and that explains why the next attempt was also much easier, because he had good days over there. So you have to put in the hard work. He said 14 hours a day. That is not at all easy to do, especially constantly over a month. So Vidhan, for the last person with WorkX, what was it like for you?
So my first attempt was during the final year of my college.
Okay.
And yeah, when I was in the college, it was hectic for me as well. Like when you had to prepare for your final year exams, you've got projects, you've got CET, you've got CAT. So there is pressure. And during my second attempt, since I was in the education industry itself, I felt it was a bit easier for me because you are already in that bubble. So you study, you know things, you interact with those people, and you do find time to study. So it wasn't as hectic as what Aditya and Ankit would have had. But yeah, it was difficult. And we have to manage. We have to make some time for job as well as CET.
That's fair. Now that we're done with all the people with WorkX, let's look at what it was like for someone who was a fresher. So Harsh, what is it like?
Sure. So I think when you are in a final year and you are preparing for all these exams, first of all, my CAT was like, I believe 2 to 3 days just after my final year exams. And that becomes very hectic to manage both of them, because you want to score good in your final year exams too and score good in your CAT too. Nevertheless, CAT did not go well. But then during CET again, I had my term tests. We had assignment submissions, project submissions, all those things are going on. But you have to find time wherever you can. So I'll just give you an example. I remember that whenever there were any labs, I was a computer science student, right? So whenever there were any labs and the teacher wasn't coming in, or probably the teacher was late, I used to open my interface and start solving sectional tests over there. Or even in lectures, there are so many apps available. You can just start solving randomly. So it's on you how much time you want to put in. You have to keep that vision of where you want to go and work towards it continuously. So definitely it's difficult, but I would not say it's unmanageable. It's absolutely manageable, and everyone, if Anay and I can do it being in the final year, I think anyone can do it. It's very much possible.
That's nice. So just to add my story, similarly as in the final year, and both our colleges are quite infamous for having extremely long long college hours, and high attendance policies. So we have to attend college. It's not like we can't. And as he said, me too. I used to sit in class many times. I used to remove just random calculations on the top of my head, sit and practice math, or sit and practice some logical puzzles that are there, because I used to really enjoy solving. So I'd randomly be sitting anywhere in class, even if there's a teacher sometimes. But I used to just sit and solve questions and just make sure that I'm in the zone of practicing. This was obviously towards CET. It was higher over there, but that's what the point is. You have to keep doing something. You have to keep extracting as much time as you can. Plus, we have a thing called a final year project as well. So we have to constantly work on that. So you really need to manage, and I think it's very possible to do it. It is not a very big deal. So you have to find that time. It's just about finding that time. Another example was that if I was walking on the road, I would just look at random number plates and start multiplying and adding those numbers. Like you just see 6777, just add it up, whatever, just 27, that's 27, just anything that you want. Just keep adding, multiplying the numbers. So 343 into 6, just anything that you get. Just take any numbers, multiply it. You get much faster. And like this, you just start, it just starts clicking to you. And then once this starts clicking, in the exam, it becomes much faster. And I think this is not limited to something in CET. I think in any entrance exam that you need, quant is always going to be needed. We'll be coming back to this because a lot of you have put that as your weakest section. So we'll be speaking about this quite extensively later on as well. So we'll come back to this. But this is one thing that I think made a big difference to me. Even after having quant is something that I considered stronger. I really had to constantly work on the shortcuts and the quick calculations part. So we'll come back to this, but yeah, that's the thing. Now over here, we have Harsh and I have taken it for the first time, but the others had a second attempt. So there are many people who have done such a thing, who take it for the first time and then decide to take it again next year, because obviously it's a coveted college. So you really want to get there. So you want to do as much as you can to get there. So you take a gap, and considering COVID, a lot of people will be doing it this year. That's for sure. So what we would like to know is, what was the difference between last year's prep and this year's prep? So let's start with Aditya. what is it like for you compared to if you had to talk about how you were 1 year ago when you took CET? So CET 2019 versus CET 2020.
Yeah, so in my last attempt, there were two myths that were going around. So the first myth that I believed was that if you start scoring 140 in mocks, uh, you will get JVMS or you'll score really well in the actual exam. So once I started hitting that number in mocks, I became really complacent and casual, and that reflected on the D-Day where I could not get my desired score or my desired college. Another thing was that puzzles, people say that it is absolutely important to get a top rank or a top college. So even though I was not good at puzzles, I tried solving it in the mocks and even on the D-Day, and that did not come off. So what I did this time was obviously strengthen my strong areas, which were the other sections more. Uh, Picked up some more shortcuts, faster ways to solving quant, abstract, and so on. Also, I did not focus on puzzles. I left puzzles for the end, and even for puzzles, I had developed some shortcuts that if I get time, I would have been able to solve puzzles. But I kept it in the end. On the final day, I could just solve one puzzles out of 5 or 6, and I could not solve even input-output section. But I was not good at it, so it made sense to leave that instead of my stronger sections. So that was better this time.
I think this is quite a surprise to us because we've always had that mindset that puzzles becomes the most important thing. But we have a very good example right here who is saying that puzzles are not the make or break section, and you have other things. I think the 140 score that is there, the number, when you fall in love with that number, I think that also is something that all of us have gone through. Because all of us, I'm sure, whenever we've had a good score, we would have been elated, absolutely joyous that, oh wow, we've got such a high score, of the pakka hone hi wala hai. But that is not how it is. It is not the mock that matters. It is the final exam and the rank. So it's not about the score. It's really not that number. Sure, the number matters. It's not, you have to aim for some number, but you have to go as, you can't get a number and be happy with it. So I think that's a really good point. And even the puzzles thing, I think that is one thing that we keep listening to a lot of people who keep saying that puzzles are really important. You have to spend the most time on puzzles. When we come to the question on what our strategy was for the exam, I think it'll be even more, it'll be better explained as to what we are talking about puzzles and how we approached it. So let's just put this for that.
So just
Shreekanth?
one more
Yeah,
thing to
sorry.
add. So on that, even after my exam, just because I solved one puzzle, I was not confident myself that I would get a good rank. So I was telling my friends that maybe it won't work out this year also because I just solved one puzzle in the exam. But that's what I'm saying. Puzzles are not important. It can be done without puzzles. I'm not saying leave puzzles, but it can be done without puzzles also.
Correct. That makes sense.
I remember your text, Aditya. You were being modest by then. That you
I'm
couldn't
sure he
solve
wasn't
puzzles,
being
couldn't solve
modest,
it.
and I'm sure he was actually being honest because after an exam,
Aditya
it's a
doing
more.
one puzzle and getting a rank of All India 5 is extremely crazy.
It is crazy, but I think to be very honest, I don't think I saw too many puzzles either. Now that I have to think of it, if I had to remember what my paper was like, I think there were 6 puzzles. I probably would have got 2 or 3. So it wasn't I thought I was great at puzzles, just by the way. I thought I was really good in puzzles is my strength, and I have said also in many places that puzzles is like my thing. I used to enjoy solving puzzles. Even today, I mentioned that I used to enjoy solving puzzles. But that's the point. It's not, you can't be dependent on one section. Is what we're trying to say. And I'm sure Aditya wasn't being modest after the exam because that's the time you're most honest after the exam has
Right.
tested you and what has happened. So Shreekanth, what was it like for you between the two years over there?
Yeah, so my experience was a bit contrasting from Aditya's. So what happened in my first attempt was I was completely afraid of the verbal section. So I was not very good at English, reading a lot. People used to say you have to read Hindi newspapers, read articles and stuff like that and solve so many questions. So what I used to do, LR was the strongest for me. So I gave the maximum amount of time for the logical reasoning section, and rest all the sections were my strengths. But verbal was completely difficult for me. So what used to happen is I used to give around 10 to 12 minutes only for verbal, and even on the day of the exam I only gave 12 minutes for the entire verbal sections for the 50 marks. And in my second attempt I also regret this by saying ki I gave only 10 to 12 minutes in verbal. So what was the difference was that I used to fear the verbal reasoning ka section. but I think you should not be afraid of a particular section in CET. Basically, you should try to make all of your sections as your strengths. So what happened in my second attempt was I try to learn what are the different ways to score good in verbal. So I did not read any Hindi newspapers for my second attempt also. So I don't believe in that you have to keep on reading, but I gave a lot of sectional tests and I analyzed the mock properly. And in my second attempt, I gave equal importance to all the sections, not only my strong, not only my weak. So at the end of the day, I believe you can be strong in each and every of the section, but the end of the day, you have to score the maximum marks out of 200. That is the only main thing. So yeah, this was my experience.
Okay, that sounds good. Ankit, it was pretty. I mean, the last year was also very close for you, so I doubt there would be that much improvement. But I'm sure since you've come to AR2, there has to be something that has changed. So, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy to go from 0 to 99.93, but to make that transition from 9.3 to 9.9 required a lot of effort. And that one difference that I felt that I had to figure out was understanding what strategies and what tips and what tricks to use in a particular question or a particular chapter. So like in the market, there are so many different kinds of tricks and strategies suggested by different people, X strategy, Y strategy. There are a lot of strategies that are suggested. And I'm not saying a strategy is good or bad, but you have to sit and figure out on your own which strategy will work for you and which will be the most time saving and something that will help you save time, which you can utilize to attempt other questions. So I had to work very hard on that and develop that thing on my own. And I think that is what worked for me and that is what created that difference.
I think that's quite fair. We'll come back to this point later, but in mocks, we found a lot of things where our mock scores were becoming stagnant. You would get to a point and then our mock scores would be stagnant, something like that. So we'll come back to this again about what you said about shortcuts.
Right.
Shreekanth, you have to say something.
Yeah. I missed one point. So in my first attempt, what happened was I completely isolated myself within a one room itself. So I did not come out of my bedroom for like 30 days. I used to give CET mocks back to back, cut off from everyone, not even talking to anyone. So what happened was I used to analyze my mock myself. So I did not get a variety of opinions on which section should I focus on, which section should I not, or even try to get different opinions of other people. So in my second attempt, whereas I created a group of people, even Ankit was there with me. So what happened is we used to analyze our mocks with each other, like show him my scorecard and look at his scorecard and analyze which section he is scoring in itna minutes and I can score in itna minutes. So how to improve on that. So that is also a really important thing. I mean, you should have a mentor with you who is supporting you how to improve rather than you go on doing it all alone by yourself. So that is also one important point, I think.
That sounds fair.
I remember that Shreekanth worked really hard on his verbal section. Like he used to ask for screenshots of my verbal analysis of the mocks, and he used to sit and analyze what he made wrong and what I did right. So he has worked very hard on his verbal compared to last year.
And that explains a lot. And just one more thing, guys. If you take 63 mocks in 30 days, that's what happens. You end up locking yourself in the room. And so just since you have time right now, just plan out your mocks properly. We'll come to that. We'll come to how we planned out our mocks. But just a heads up. Vidhan, what was your difference in the 2 years?
Oh, so for the first year, it was mostly building my concepts. I mean, I was a newbie. I knew nothing. What tricks and tips if I don't know how to solve it properly? I mean, कुछ पता ही नहीं था, कुछ नहीं आता था. And I still remember sitting in the class asking people, yeah, how to solve this allegation wala question, where to put what number. So it was, mostly knowing things, understanding things, knowing the basic method, using that basic method because of which you couldn't get good score. And after first year, when I knew the concepts, so I could work more on the tricks, on the tips. I could watch different videos, shortcuts. And that's how I tried improving my score, and it did improve eventually.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's quite a good set of answers that we have. Now, another question that we keep getting, I think this is a very, very common question. This is probably everything. The number of mocks that you take. Is there a magic number that can get you through? Is there something that you have to take? Let's just decode what that is. And more importantly, what was the balance between quantity and quality? Now, on this bench, I had taken 63 mocks. I was someone who had taken 63 mocks. So I planned that over 4 months, unlike Shreekanth. But I had quite a good amount of time. But I think all of us have a very diverse opinion on this. So let's just go through what it was like. So it's about the number of mocks, Have you planned the mocks? And what is your opinion between quality and quantity? So we'll start with Ankit.
Yeah, so I gave about 30 to 35 mocks, which is, I would say, a fairly average number for the number of mocks to give. And I started my prep in around mid-December, and I started giving mocks from that time itself. And I started with giving weekly mocks, so one mock a week till about mid-Jan. And then I lifted it up slowly to about 2 mocks a week till about say mid-Feb or end-Feb. I kept that same thing of 2 mocks a week. And then in the last 10 days leading up to the CET, I gave a mock every day. And along with the analysis of that mock after attempting it at that time itself. So yeah, that's about
Correct. Now that you mentioned it, analysis, I think I just want to point out one thing over here. Analysis is extremely important, the analysis of mocks. And I think Shreekanth has a really good thing to talk about when it comes to analysis. So Shreekanth, go for it.
Yeah, so for my first attempt, I did zero analysis because I never knew how to analyze a mock. So I used to give randomly, and because I did not know how to analyze a mock, so मैं क्या करता था, हर दिन मैं 2 mocks दे देता था. Like analyze करने को time ही नहीं, मैं क्या करूँ, तो मैं mock देता था, and उसके बाद वापस एक mock दे दो. So sometimes I gave 3 mocks also per day. So at that year बिल्कुल भी analyze नहीं किया, but in the second attempt I had made a group of people who were preparing for CET together. I had mentors also to help me. तभी we used to analyze, like just Ankit mentioned कि मैं उसके verbal का section का I used to take the photo कि what all questions he did right and what all questions I did right, and compare कि how are you doing this question within 1 minute or within 2 seconds, like second by second का analysis I did in the second time. And it was not very like completely into that, मतलब काफी chilled out. We were giving one mock every alternate day. So analysis is very important. Maybe तुमको पता नहीं होता, there is a particular way to analyze, so just go for it, how whatever you feel कि मुझे बस इसमें कम आ रहा है, मुझे किसी भी करके इसमें मार्क्स ज्यादा लाना है. So that is one thing.
Correct, that makes sense. So since you were talking, we'll just continue with you. What was your experience like in the number of mocks and quality versus quantity?
So number of mocks, I feel कि 40 around 40 mocks are sufficient basically, but मैं जब first attempt दे रहा था, so I gave 63 mocks, right? So after 40 mocks, the scores were stagnant. So I didn't feel there was a massive jump in my 60th mock या 50th mock के बाद में. So number of mocks should be around 40. In my second attempt also this year, I gave 35 to 40 mocks. So that was sufficient, I guess. You don't have to give like an extremely large number of mocks. But also one more thing I would like to mention here is first attempt में I gave only one institute का mock. I did not give कोई भी दूसरा institute का mock. Whereas in second attempt I gave अलग institutes का mock, and that really helped me because I was prepared for the variety of difficulty levels in the mock. Right? So कोई mocks were very difficult, कोई were very easy. So you don't know कि CET का paper कैसा आएगा. Like few years back the cutoff was 125. Last year it was 145. Maybe this year it is in around 137 or 135, something in that range. So you don't know the difficult number. And I never chased the 140 ka marks as such. I used to chase top 10 or top 20 ka rank in the mock which I am giving. So that was my focus. Yeah.
Correct. I think that makes a lot of sense because I've always had this opinion that you after a point you can't score higher in mocks. Mocks are made in such a way that you have to get some particular range. Like the maximum you can solve in 150 minutes will be at a certain point. So you can't really judge where you're going to get. For example, IMS mocks are much tougher than the other mocks that are there. So in IMS mocks, you really can't score 140s or even 150s in that. It is impossible to score that. Impossible for students, for teachers and all. It's a different thing altogether. Someone's prepared for a long time. So that's the thing. It depends on the rank that you're scoring, not the marks. So I think that variety is a very important thing, and I think all of us agree on that. So Aditya, what was it like for you?
Yeah, so I had given 25 to 30 mocks, and my number was lesser than the others, but I used to analyze each mock very thoroughly, and also I had taken mocks of different classes. So yeah, I think the variety is really important rather than the quantity.
Okay. Vidhan?
Yeah, I completely agree with Aditya. It's more about quality than quantity. So I think even I would have taken somewhere around 30 to 35 mocks in these 3 months, January to March. And until the end of Feb, it was mostly 1 or maximum 2 mocks a week. Even after February, I couldn't take 1 mock every day like Shreekanth and all. It was too difficult for me. So it was a mock in 3-4 days again. Yeah. So more
Okay.
quality over quantity and more analyzing the mocks.
Correct. So we'll just, I'll come back to this question afterwards, but let's just discuss what the mock plan was like. Like, how did we actually plan our mocks? Was it one mock per day, especially for the people who are working? How do you manage taking mocks with work? So Aditya, I'm coming back to you, but what is that like?
So I, in the start, has to give one mock on the weekend, and then I think around Jan and two mocks on the weekends. But weekend was the only time I had to give mocks. So it was just two mocks on the weekend till like March, and when I started to take leaves from office, that time I has to give alternate day mocks. And the most important thing here is after mock analysis, you have to constantly improve either your rank uh, or you don't commit a mistake you did in the previous mock. So you have to constantly improve that, and that is the most important thing. Just
Correct.
improving from your previous mock in any criteria.
Okay, that sounds good. Harsh, your experience with this?
Considering I started like pretty much late, like last week of January, I did not give a large number of mocks, somewhere around 20. But what I made sure is that I was giving mocks from different institutes. So that brings in the variety. I couldn't agree more than with all of these guys, because all of them have said that variety is very important, because that makes you, resilient to any situation that would come up on your final day. And every classes would have a set pattern in which they would set their mocks. So it becomes very important actually to give all those ranges and cover everything and be prepared. So yeah, 20 mocks, but different varieties. And just to say about how I planned it, in the beginning I used to give 2 mocks a day, but from March, I believe I gave 1 mock every day.
Okay.
2 mocks per week and then 1 mock every day. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Contrasting to this, I took 63 mocks in 1 year. So that was again after September. So because it was after September, I had enough time to plan it very nicely. I could take 2 mocks a week till the end and still reach a good high figure. So I was able to do that very nicely and had enough time for an analysis of the mocks as well. So that was one thing that helped me a lot, because I would spend, I think if a mock is 2.5 hours, you need to spend at least 5 to 6 hours analyzing it, because when you're analyzing it, you're going through what went wrong. So in CET, it is not only about scoring higher marks, it's about reducing the time as well to get the answers right. So there are two things that you're doing when you're checking the analysis. You're increasing your marks and you're reducing the time. So that is your motive for this. So that's what was that was our focus entirely. And that's what we used to do while analyzing the mocks. You spend a lot more time analyzing it and do that. For me, I used to take it anytime, like, because it was started in September, I was able to manage it with college exams and everything. So considering that it's December right now, I think it's still good enough time to fit in a good number of mocks. And if you take all our averages, around 30 to 40. So that would be what our average is around. So that's about that. And currently as well, I'm receiving a lot of questions about which exact providers did we take mocks from. So let's just talk about that. Ankit, what were the mock providers and what was your opinion about it? How should people go about this? And I think we'll all agree over here that variety is the most important. I think we've all said that. So you have to buy a couple of test providers. I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's just hear it though.
Right. I agree. Like, you should give a variety, at least from 2 to 3 different institutes. So I had taken Time, IMS, and TestFunda, and yeah, I think they were all good. So no issues there.
Okay. Aditya?
So last year I had given IMS and CET King, and this year I opted for IMS, Olive Board, and TestFunda. So I would recommend buying from 3 different test providers.
Okay. Vidhan?
So I was taking IMS, I was taking CET, I was taking Time, and there was a huge difference in the difficulty of all those 3 mocks. So yeah, it really helped me. Like when I'm giving one classes, I was scoring really high, and with other classes, I was scoring really low. So nothing motivated, nothing demotivated me. I was just writing them out, just going with the flow.
I think over here I'd like to add one thing, that when it comes to these scores, we've all had scores from different institutes that go up and down. What matters is our attitude towards it. I think we have to tell ourselves that, oh, the score is not what is defining me. Like the first IMS mock that I took, I remember the proctored exam that I taken in the center. I came out of the paper having a headache. My head was hurting. I was wondering what just happened over there. I'm supposed to be good at this. I'm supposed to have speed. I'm supposed to be able to I should be able to solve all of this properly. But I came out of that and I was getting a headache. That what just happened? What were those 2.5 hours? So a lot of these classes have a tendency to make the idea is to prepare you for the worst. Now, each person has a different definition of worst. Each person has a different definition of the best. So the best thing to do is to take a variety. Shreekanth, we'll hear from you now.
Yeah, there would be a really great example over here. So for my first attempt, I only gave one institute ka mock. I only gave CET King ka mock, pura 63 mocks. So they had around 45. I gave Wapas 20 mocks. Uh, so I don't think you should go with only one particular institute ka mock. In the second attempt, whereas I gave TestFunda, Time, IMS, CET King. So I gave around 5-6 institutes ka mocks in my second attempt.
Okay. Just one thing we'd like to point out that because even if you have just one mock provider, it's not that the mock provider is bad. It's just that you need a variety. It's not about the quality of mocks anywhere. It's just that everyone has a different way of setting the paper and what their expectations should be. So it's not about that. You just need a variety of mocks. So Harsh,
I gave only 20 mocks, but then still I had bought from a couple of providers. So I was enrolled with Endeavor. So first was Endeavor, of course. And then next I also gave from IMS. So, that gives a balance. Some tests are easy, sometimes tests are difficult. And your score, literally, it does not matter in the beginning because that's the journey that you have to make. It might be difficult, but you will grow. That's the aim, right?
Correct. Yeah, I think all of us agree with that wholeheartedly. For my behalf, I think on my behalf, it was I bought CET King. CET King was what I started off with because those are the only mocks that you get in September. No other test provider comes up with mocks. So for anyone who wants to start early, that's the only option. That's a good option to have. So CET King were the ones that I bought earlier. Then I bought Time, IMS, and Patrick Sir's mocks. I think Patrick Sir's mocks have a huge variety, and IMS are quite tougher. So the point is, we all had a different variety of mocks. So that was the thing. Now, about all the questions that I've received over here, I think there have been at least 10 questions about which mocks did we buy. On the Google form, I think the most common question was which mocks have we bought. So just to help you guys out, we are partnering with TestFunda so that we can bring you the mocks at the cheapest cost possible. So stay tuned for that. We are working on something with them, and there's another exciting announcement at the end of this session. So just stay tuned for that. So just wait for that. Yeah. There was another question over here which said, where do you find past papers? You don't get past papers of CET. Everything that you get is just memory based. So there's no use searching for that. You just have to take mocks of providers and everything. But just stay tuned for this TestFunda announcement. We'll be informing on Telegram, emailing, everything that is there once it's finalized. But our main aim is to help you guys out to get it at as cheap a cost as possible, because I think mock should be, it's best if you take a higher number. So that's our aim. So that's what it is. Now, let's look at, okay. So obviously, since we've got good scores, we cannot really talk about a weakest section, but I'm sure each and every one of us has a section that we disliked. Each and every one of us has a section that if you had to get up in the night and start solving, you would not want to. You would just not get going at it. You would not want to try solving. So what was that section, and how did you go about that? Now, just before we start answering this, we're taking a poll on the Telegram group, and in that we had asked you what was your toughest section. Most of that was quant. I think the second highest was verbal, if I'm not wrong. Third,
verbal
logic.
And LR were kind of
LR
similar.
and verbal.
Okay,
Yeah.
LR and verbal were almost a tie, and then abstract. Now, the person, whoever had abstract, here's someone for you, Ankit. Let's go.
Yeah, so I would say that abstract was my weakest section out of all of the four. And I think that was inherently upon me because I'm not good at pattern recognition on the whole. And it takes me time to figure out the patterns and the trends from one picture to another. But that didn't stop me from, thinking कि मैं abstract छोड़ सकता हूँ और बाकी section से cover कर लूँगा. I made it a point to practice abstract every single day. Like I would pick up 20 to 25. There are a lot of questions floating around in PDFs and from various sources. Just pick up 25 to 30 questions and solve every day. And I think that helped me improve my abstract a lot. Like initially when I started giving mocks and sectionals, I used not get about 20 in abstract at all. It was around 17 to 18 out of 25. But once I started practicing every day and made it a point to do it regularly, it started increasing and I reached that 21 to 22 mark, which I feel is ideal for abstract. So yeah, that is something I did.
So if just one thing, I have a slight different opinion over here. My abstract was really good, and I used to always get a higher score. So but still, even to reach there, you had to practice every day. I just want to put that out there, that the practice is what was making it. It doesn't matter if it's a strong section, weak section, it's a practice. Also, just one thing, I find it a little difficult to read questions that are coming right now. So please save it at the end. Save all the questions for the end. Otherwise, you'll have to copy paste again at that time. So it'll just be easier if you keep it for the end. I'll go through that at that time. We have a couple of other questions that we're going through. We'll be covering all the things that are there. So Harsh, we'll hear from you now.
So for me, like the toughest part was verbal. Like I'm not a very good reader. I'm more of a visual person. I like to see movies and not read books, right? So it became a bit difficult for me. But after a few months, I started developing strategies like how to read paragraphs. So I used to follow some kind of rhythm, some kind of flow, then making those side notes, some emotion identification notes, like what the passage is inherently trying to say. So all these things you need to develop over time. And basically that's what I did. And that's how in CET, actually, as I said, verbal was very difficult for me. But on that day, I don't know, intuition just kicked in and I gave more time to verbal and solved a lot more in verbal, which was actually my weaker section. So the thing is, basically, if you put in efforts, if you have the right strategies with you, I think even your difficult or your weaker sections can become your strengths whenever required.
Correct. I think for verbal, we'll go to Shreekanth now. He's already mentioned that his verbal was what had caused him issues last year. So I think he's the best one to hear this one.
So verbal was my weakest section. I hardly gave 10 to 12 minutes. So, but I realized that if you want to target a really good college or a really good score, for example, JBIMS or 99.99, you should not have a weaker section. You should just take this thing of कि मेरा ये section weak है. So in my first attempt मेरा वही था कि verbal weak है, मुझे verbal नहीं आता, छोड़ दो, बाकी सब में focus करो. But in my second attempt, what I did, I tried to see कि क्यों मेरा verbal section weak है. Why am I getting lower score than other people? So as I mentioned, Ankit और मैंने साथ में verbal का prep किया था. So I used to see कि what I can do. Maybe I cannot score 40 in 50 in verbal, but I can still score 25 to 30 ना. So मेरा बस यही focus था कि getting the maximum marks out of verbal and giving the lowest amount of time. Not lowest ऐसा भी नहीं कि only 10 or 9 minutes, like giving a decent amount of time. I had a particular this thing in my mind always कि मैं हर section को एक lower limit and maximum limit देता था and used to give my time according to that itself. So the paper was 200 marks, so I had divided into 100 marks का each. LR and abstract for me were 800 marks, 75 plus 25. Verbal and quants was 50-50, एक और 100 marks. So I used to mainly focus कि 150 marks का paper है, so within 75 minutes I will do LR and abstract, and बचा हुआ 75 में I'll do quants and verbal. So this was in my second attempt when I realized कि कोई भी section weak नहीं होना चाहिए, and then I slowly saw कि how much marks can I get in particular section giving the least amount of time. And uske baad mein there was actually this thing, there are a lot of different shortcuts in available outside, right? Ki har section mein, like even if you want to score a good score in verbal, there are shortcuts for it, ki how to solve this grammatical error ka question, or passage ko quickly glance through kaise karna hai. There is difference between CAT ka passage and CET ka passage. Pehle to I did not knew ki kuch difference hai bhi ki nahi hai. पहले तो I used to just leave the passage, CAT में भी leave and CET में भी leave. So then I realized कि कुछ difference है, there are certain shortcuts, but problem ये था कि there are thousands of shortcuts in YouTube. मतलब हर एक जगह पे हजारों shortcuts है. There was not particular to the point कि हाँ भाई ये shortcut तुम लगाओगे तो तुम्हें exam में मिलेगा. So what happened is in the end I prepared with a group of people. हम लोग ने सारे shortcuts, different shortcuts देखे कैसे कैसे करना है, and then pointed out कि ये shortcut exam में काम करता है, right? So that also helped me a lot कि which shortcut to use in the exam particular, because one question can be solved in 10 different ways, but in CET exam कौन से way में तुम करोगे, that matters the most. So yeah, this was my strategy.
Like, online if you go to find कितना मतलब मिलते ही रहता है, there is no end to it, but the thing is वो सब काम नहीं आता है. You have to identify all those things that are actually relevant to CET and work on those things, because that is at the end of the day what is going to help you. So correct. I believe everyone on this panel would have done some sort of things which to like basically identify all those strategies, all those patterns or shortcuts, tricks, whatever you may call it, but that is what have, I believe, helped us, right?
Definitely. I think shortcuts, as I said, it was either getting something right or reducing the time. And the only way you can reduce the time was by using some shortcuts or some crude method of, finding the answer one way or the other. whatever it may be, using options or putting some different logic to it. So I think that made a huge difference to our preparation, and we'll be working on, we're kind of, working on something for the shortcuts as well. So we'll make the proper announcement at the end of this. Aditya, we'll come to you now for this.
Yeah, so I hated solving puzzles and also input output. I could never crack the logic of puzzles and input output. So in my second attempt, I firstly obviously focused on improving my other sections, quant, verbal, some shortcuts in quant and abstract to improve my speed there and give some more time to puzzles. Then what I did was kept puzzles and input output at the end. So even if kuch bhi chhote, to it will be my weakest part. And also I practice obviously a lot of puzzles, learn some trick shortcuts that if I have time at the end for puzzle, let's say if I have 5 minutes more and ek puzzle hi baki hai, then ho jata wo solve. So I did not leave puzzles. I developed ways of tackling puzzles, but I kept it towards the end, and I did not get that much time in the CET at the end, but I could solve if, let's say, I had more time that day.
Correct. One funny anecdote that I want to share is that 2 days ago, Aditya and I were discussing this thing that he said about input output. And for me, that was one of my favorite things to solve, because I could always do it really fast. And now he's really shocked that there's a shorter way of doing it. Like, there's a very, very short way. So you never know what Aditya's rank could have been had he known that one shortcut. So there's only a regret for Aditya now. But yeah. So Vidhan, we'll come to you now.
Yeah, so I always thought that my weaker section is verbal, and it was verbal for CAT. But when I shifted to CET, it became quants. Now in CAT, you have to comprehend each and every passage for difficult words. So it becomes really difficult for you. And also the options are really confusing. Whereas in CET, you can find the answers right away from the passage. The words are a little easier. And yeah, so, and whereas when it comes to quants, in CAT, you do get time for quants. Whereas in verbal, CET, you have 50 questions. You have those big chunks of questions, and you have to know shortcuts for quants.
Correct.
Those normal methods wouldn't work for CET, and it would take your time. So based on time, I think quants was very difficult for me in CET.
That's fair. I think I had the same experience in this, because for those who don't know, the difference between CAT and CET is that in CET, there are no sectional time limits. There are no sectional cutoffs. There's nothing like that. It's just purely 200 questions in 150 minutes. You can do whatever you want. You decide your strategy. In CAT, you have to follow what they tell you, like the structure that is there. Here, you can do whatever you want. So here it becomes even more important to be versatile with the paper. And that was the same thing with me. In quant, I was able to solve the questions if I had enough time. So you don't have very difficult questions in CET. It is not that you need 5 minutes to solve a question or something like that. You can very easily solve it in time. But are you able to solve some other section faster than that? Or what is the exact situation that is happening to you? For me, when it came to quant, I would end up solving one question for 2 to 3 minutes and probably get it wrong in the end. It wasn't that I was bad at it. I just wasn't doing it properly. I wasn't using the tricks or shortcuts that were there. I was just constantly using bad methods to solve. And this took me time to realize. So I used to put limits on my quant, which is why that was my weakest, even though I could score in it. But it would constantly be the place where I was getting the lowest percentage of marks. Like, it was always the lowest contributor to my final score. So we all have a different, so as you guys can see, we all have a different variety of, we have a variation when it comes to our weakest section as well. But what matters over here is how we overcame that. So in that line, the next thing that I would like to ask you guys is what did you do to this? What was your strategy for mock taking? Or what section order did you take? Keeping the weakest thing in mind. So Harsh, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So I feel my strongest part was abstract. So basically I used abstract as the beginner thing to just get into that momentum. It's fun. As I said, I'm a visual person. So it just becomes smooth as butter. Like, I gave around 18 minutes for abstract reasoning. Then I went to quants. Now quants basically is again my strength. So I solved it around in 35 minutes, I believe. Now, just the day before CET, I was said that I'm going to do verbal. I'm going to do LR next, because verbal again is my weakest section. I was like, I'll do it in the end. But after watching the reviews, I was in the next day. I mean, there are 4 slots. I was in the 3rd slot. So in that slot, I came to know that LR is going to be much difficult. So that was a conscious decision that I made, that, okay, if LR is difficult, let me do it at the end. Let's try verbal pehle. And on that day, as I said, verbal became very intuitive. I don't know how, but I was just going through it like pretty good. And I did verbal. Then I went to LR. In LR also, I solved all the singlets first, and then the difficult sets, because that was the news of the hour that the LR sets are difficult. So basically, how I took the news is that, okay, this is the news. These are my strengths. This is how I can adjust. So a lot of people might panic. Okay, LR is my strength. How will I do if LR is difficult? But I think your attitude would matter a lot in how you take all these news that come in. Because for sure, if you're on the second day, or even if the second, third, or fourth slot, someone or the other will tell you कि भाई ये difficult है या easy है. It's on you how you take that news and then adapt yourself and keep your mind ready for the test day. So basically, be aware of what you're doing.
Correct. That makes sense. Just to add one more question, what was your opinion on experimentation? Did you change your sections a lot?
Yeah, so in the beginning, while I was preparing in the mocks, I used to try a lot of different things, and that's how I came with the order that I mentioned. But even on the final day, so in cons, there are some difficult questions, right? So the idea was to get all the simple questions done first. So while I did cons, I did all the simple questions first, then I did entire verbal, then I did the simple questions of LR. Then I went back to cons, because LR sets were much more difficult than the difficult questions of cons, right? So that's what I did the cons difficult part, and then finally I touched upon LR sets, probably solved around 3 sets, and then last mein to sab matka hi marta hai, because no negative marking, right?
Correct. That's fair. I think this is a common thread between all of us. Take the easy questions first and go ahead. So we'll hear from Ankit. What was your opinion on experimentation and strategy like?
Yeah, so I personally don't believe in experimentation. I followed a fixed order right from the first mock till the last mock and till the CET exam. So my order was like, I used to start off with the verbal section, and a lot of people keep asking me how much time I've given to each section. So I'll state that as well. So I used to start off with the verbal section, and since it was my strength, I would get done with it in about 25 to 30 minutes. Then after the verbal section, I would move on to the quant section. And to the quant section, I would give about 30 to 35 minutes, depending on the difficulty of the section. And after that, I would move on to abstract. So my point there was I would give only 15 minutes to abstract. No matter how many questions I'm able to solve, it will get done in 15 minutes. And then I would move on to logical reasoning. And even in that, I would first solve the single type logic, the single question type logic questions and the critical reasoning questions. And then I'd move on to the puzzles. And I would have around 5 to 10 minutes left at the end for all that matka marofying. And if I had any more time left, I would again go back to abstract and get back to a few questions that I had found tough initially.
Right. Again,
I would like to add just one more thing. Like, this is, I believe, a tip for everyone and from everyone on the panel. I think, like, when you're attempting your mocks, don't do that matka wala thing. Like, all your mocks should be basically without matka, and leave 5 minutes in the end. Like close your mock before 5 minutes, like saving for that matka wala part. That will give you an honest standing of where you are right now. And basically, if that score grows, then you are growing. If that is not growing, then more efforts are needed for that.
Correct. Just to reiterate that, I think only in the last 2 exams that I've taken, I've marked flukes. I don't think I ever marked flukes. Otherwise, the only reason I did in the last mock was so that I'm used to it and I don't mess up on the last day. But otherwise, it's of no use marking flukes because you really aren't scoring those marks. And if you aren't scoring those marks, it's of no use just to show that you've got a higher mark, because higher mock score, because that's not what matters in the end. Coming to what Ankit said, he had kept abstract in the end because that was his weakest section. So I think that is one thing that all of us would have done. So whatever you find the toughest is what should be at the end of it. So all of us have our own strategies that are there. I'll come to this again, but yeah, that's the main thing that is here. And secondly, Ankit had a proper time limit set for each and every section. So even if the paper was tougher, even if the paper is easier, he was ready with his mindset of the paper. Then that's a really good takeaway from that. Shreekanth, what was it like for you?
Yeah, so my mock experience was a bit different from Harsh and yours. So I used to mark tukka from the first mock till the last mock. So my mindset was this case, not leave about 5 minutes in the end for marking a tukka. What I used to do, if I am tackling one section, I had made a minimum and maximum time limit ka chart. कि मैं इतने time limit में I am completing LR का section, that's it. And when the time limit is approaching, कुछ भी question बचाओ, don't look at it, just mark and go. Whenever a question comes, I won't mark it for review and come back again. So once it's gone, it's gone. Since it's a speed based test, this was my strategy. And coming to my order in which I took, So there was everyone has a particular order. So what I think is, what is the reasoning behind your particular order? Like, how do you think it is beneficial for you? So for my example, I'll give it this way. What I used to think is LR, abstract, and verbal. So they don't have any particular like mathematics solution type of thing. You don't need to put pen on paper like and solve some bada equation to get the answer. So what I used to do, ki I am fresh now starting the mock. So LR needs a lot of information to be retained. Like in puzzles, you have 14 different points ना. So मैं क्या करता था कि उसमें बहुत सारे options आपको retain करना है, बहुत सारे points आपको याद रखना है. So that makes you solve it quickly. So when I'm fresh, I used to tackle LR first, and there was no particular this way ki I will put puzzles in the last and traditional logic in the first. I used to go जैसा question आया वैसा, because that time I was fresh in my mind. फिर उसके बाद में abstract and verbal, they are just presence of mind and your visual ability का thing. You don't need to require to solve complex equation in that. Quants में last में रखता था because there was one thing for me. I'm very I tend to give more time to particular questions in quants. Like वो मेरे ego में आ जाता था कि how can I not do this particular question. So what I used to do, I restricted myself to the to 35 minutes for quants last में. So what used to happen is, अगर if I'm stuck in a particular question, there was a pressure in me कि अरे time खत्म हो जाएगा, अब तो छोड़ना ही पड़ेगा. Whereas अगर मैंने quants को first किया होता तो अरे 150 minutes है आराम से, let's do this question, अब इसका आंसर निकाल के ही मैं आगे जाऊंगा. So my strategy was ki keep quant section in the last, because if you're trying you tend to give more time to a particular question now, then put it in the last, क्योंकि under pressure you won't say कि अरे हाँ इसमें ज़्यादा time लग रहा है तो skip it, मैं next question पे jump मारता हूँ. So this was my strategy basically in mock.
Just to round up Shreekanth's strategy, I think his t-shirt exemplifies exactly what it was. So you just have to go and do it. You just have to take questions and keep solving them without thinking too much about it. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, about the thing that you said about marking flukes in the mocks, how much tougher was it to analyze after the mock?
Yeah, right. So one difference what I found is while marking the fluke, so for few like I was not targeting a particular marks in a particular mock na, ki I was
Correct.
not behind कि मुझे 140 चाहिए. So what I used to do is I want to be in the top 10 ranks and top 20 ranks, and without fluke वो rank आता नहीं. And if my rank is in somewhere 40 or 50 because of not marking the fluke, so I used to feel कि अरे यार ये miss हो गया. Like I used to get a sense of motivation कि मेरा rank अच्छा है. So that's why I used to mark flukes. But what some people do is they mark it for review. So just to reiterate, we have different opinions on giving it, and any which way it is fine. Depends how you found it helpful for your prep.
Fair enough. I think if someone's marking for flukes, I'd definitely say mark for review at least. Because if you mark for review, you know that you marked it as a fluke. So if you're able
also,
to do that,
one more thing I'd like to add is I was very good at LR. So every mock I had solved 100% of the puzzle. Matlab, I never left a single puzzle in any mock. So what happened in the D-Day is कि I had given minimum time limit of 55 minutes to LR and a maximum time limit of 65 minutes. So 65th minute approached and one puzzle was remaining. So this was the biggest decision for me. Ki should I leave it or should I solve it? But thankfully I did not solve it because I stuck to my time limit. Because in any mock, if you had given me this option na कि 65 minute है और 5 minute डाल दे तो LR कर लेगा एक और puzzle, I would have done it. But in D-Day I did not do it, and that really helped. So I think कि if you are going with a specific plan कि ऐसा ऐसा करो, then follow it. Also one thing, D-Day में क्या हुआ, I was in the second slot. So people came out after the first slot and they started giving their reviews. अरे quant section बहुत easy है, LR section बहुत hard है. So the confusion create होने लग गया था. I thought कि यार puzzles hard होगा और and मैं पहले के 65 minutes में puzzle करूंगा, गलती से कहीं अटक गया मैं, and quant section easiest है और उसको मैंने last में रखा है, अगर time नहीं बचा तो these kind of doubts come. So prepare yourself in the mocks ऐसे कि कैसा भी type का paper, like कितना भी difficult हो, तुम लोग अपना जो भी strategy तुमने बनाया, you follow that and be confident in that. That's what I'm trying to say. So वैसा it really helped me in scoring this marks.
Sounds good. That's quite a comprehensive answer. I think we have smaller answers now because of he's mentioned everything that we had to. But just for formalities, Aditya, we'll just Finish it faster.
So I started off with LR section, only the non-puzzles and non-input output part. I used to solve it in 35 minutes. Then I used to go for abstract 20 to 25 minutes. Then verbal 35 minutes, quant 40 minutes, and whatever time is left, 15 or 20 minutes, 2 puzzles. On the D-Day, I had only 10 minutes for puzzles, so I could solve only one. But I am happy that I left puzzles, whatever I don't like, for the end.
That makes sense. Again, just to
Contrast.
reiterate.
Again, contrast. Yeah.
Exactly. Big contrast over here. And at the same time, he left what he was weak at the end. Shreekanth liked puzzles. Shreekanth loved solving puzzles. He was good at solving puzzles. Aditya, on the other hand, did not. He probably was good at solving puzzles, but the time it would take or the effort it would take was not enough, which is very fair. So that makes sense. See, they've come to the same point at the end. So it doesn't make a difference afterwards what your method to get there was. And that's exactly what we're trying to show through this entire discussion. Vidhan, your order?
Yeah, so it has been same right from the first mock. It has been abstract, LR, abstract, verbal, LR, and then quants. And like Shreekanth, I've been doing tukka right from the start. And what you've been telling us how difficult it was to analyze the mocks. So for me, it wasn't difficult because I used to look at each and every question while analyzing. So even if it's correct, I used to look for alternative, faster methods. And also, while solving the mocks, whenever the timer used to show, always it used to show 150 minutes. And I used to stop with abstract and verbal when it used to reach 105 minutes. So no matter how tough it was, I used to stop at 105. I used to give another 65 minutes to LR, and then it was just 40 minutes for cons. So even during the D-Day, if someone tells me, "Arey bhai, abstract verbal was very difficult, Karima, do it in the last." Still, I used to go with the same strategy, and I used to stop verbal and abstract when the timer touched 105 minutes. So it has been same for me.
Okay. For me, it was again different over here. I experimented completely. I used to change sections almost every 2-3 mocks and just try whatever would happen. And I used to make a note of what I felt exactly during that time, during that mock. So the end of it, what I came to was something very similar to Vidhan, but mine was after taking 60 mocks. After taking 40, 50 mocks, I came there. Vidhan had it from the start. So, that's the difference between us. But for me, it was verbal and abstract in the first 30, 40 minutes, completely finished in that much time. It sometimes used to go to 40, 50 minutes as well, depending on how the section was. So let's say first 50 minutes till the timer went to 100, it used to be completely finishing off abstract and verbal. I would never look at it again. I would never come back to it at the end. That's it, it's over. Then the last 100 minutes that are left, that would be split between logical and quant. And that split would be based on how difficult the paper was or what was going on that day. If I was feeling like solving puzzles more or whatever, that depends on how the paper is and how you're feeling that day. So it used to be something like that, but I had very fixed deadlines for everything. So it was 50 minutes here, and quant used to be around 30 minutes. Like I would make sure that quant was only 30 minutes. There have been many instances where I've not done this, where I've let go of this limit and taken around 30 to 40 minutes for quant, or even 50 minutes, and have not scored marks. Have not scored good marks in that. So the time discipline that is there becomes really important over here. So yeah, that's about that answer. Now I think this is slightly a touchy topic, and a lot of people will be wanting to know this. What was your first mock score? And does it have any implication to where you ended up in the end? What did you feel demotivated at the end of it? What was that like? And also, what was your experience with stagnation? Because I think that is one thing that we've all got. So, a couple of questions. We'll start off with Vidhan.
Oh, so my first mock, I had scored 62 marks. You all won't believe, but it was 62. And with every mock, I was increasing my score with 10 marks, by 10 marks. And I think when it had reached somewhere around 100, 105, it had become stagnant because I had learned all the concepts and I didn't know any tricks. So once I started learning all those tricks, it had gone up to 120, and then again it became stagnant. So it was 120 till the very end, and you all won't even believe that. I think last 2-3 mocks I had scored just before the D-Day. Last 2-3 mocks I had scored somewhere around 120, 125. But again, that didn't demotivate me. But I just went in there fresh, thinking about nothing, not even my last mock scores. So I think that really helped me. And it's all about confidence and cool mindset on the D-Day, and you'll be good to go. And I'm sure everyone knows everything, when they go out there for CET, and it's in that moment, in the heat of that moment, that decides your final score.
Correct. So just to add to that, Vidhan was in the fourth slot, I think, third or fourth slot, if I'm
Yeah,
not wrong. Fourth
fourth
slot.
slot.
So he had all the analysis that he could get before that. For me, as in the first slot, I didn't even know what the paper would be like. He had everything, but he didn't let it affect himself. Like he had that clear in his head that that's not going to make a difference. So
Correct.
that is one thing that we really need to keep in mind. Another thing
Correct.
that I would like to point out here is that the 10 mark increase that he has said from 62 to 110, whatever, the 10 mark increase in every mock. The first few that increment was coming from concepts. So the
Concept.
initial base that you get is your concepts. But once you stagnate at a point, as he mentioned, it is shortcuts. It is shortcuts and finding how to get the right answer in a shorter amount of time. I just had to say that. Ankit, what was your first mock like?
Yeah, so I had about 110 in my first mock. And I think that is primarily because my first attempt had been good and my concepts were quite clear and quite done by that time.
Correct. That's
So
right, yeah.
then the only increment that was required for me to make was working on my shortcuts and tricks and strategies. And that is what helped me increase those marks from 110 to maybe 120 and 130. So yeah, that's about it.
That's fair. So we have two different things over here. One person who is already at a higher point, and Vidhan who didn't get demotivated enough to scoring low. So I wouldn't say low, but he had to work on. That's the basic thing that was there. Aditya, your first mock experience?
So my first mock in December second week or something was around 70. So although I had given CAT, I did not score that well in my first mock. Basically because there are so many types of questions that are exclusive to the CET, like number series or quadratic equations and all these questions. So in all these questions, it's important to know the fastest way to solve it. I did not know or I had forgotten from my previous attempt. So it took time to learn all of that again. And after that, it was just not getting demotivated by any mock score and just constantly improving. So even at the end, like Vidhan, even my score was around 125 only max in any mock. But it was just believing in yourself and not getting demotivated by any mock score, which was the opposite from last time where I got 140 in some mock and I became casual. But it's just that mock score doesn't matter that much. Just analyze and improve and be confident on the DD.
Okay. I had the same story when it came to being overconfident about mocks after getting a good score. So I think that is a very proper learning that, the number is not what matters. It's only the last day. Harsh, we'll hear from you.
Yeah, so my first mock score was around 86. But I think rather than getting demotivated, you should realize that when you want to reach from 86 to, I scored 151 finally. When you want to reach over there, there's a journey that definitely you have to take. I mean, even my first CAT mock, I had scored around 35. That was like disheartening, but you know that you have to make that journey, then you put in the right amount of efforts. And then absolutely it was like, for me, it was the transition from conceptual questions to speed-based questions. So all those things you have to develop over time. So I had around 45 days or so to develop those things, to develop that strategies or shortcuts. Again and again, everything is, triangulating to this strategies or shortcuts that we're speaking, because essentially for CET, that is what is required. You have to save on your time. You have to maximize your score by getting the right things done at the right time.
That's a really good point. So guys, just keep all these points in mind. I hope you're writing all of this down because there's a lot of information here. Shreekanth?
Yeah, so in my first attempt, I had given NMAT exam and I had given CAT exam. So NMAT ka paper is almost similar to CET ka paper. So the logical reasoning section, verbal ka section, and quant ka section. So as I said, I only studied for 30 days. So I started on 4th of Feb for my first attempt. And the reason why I started on 4th of Feb was because that day my NMAT interview was there, and I was literally thrashed by the interview panelist. Yeah, and I was very demotivated. अभी क्या करना है? And मैं सब खो गया and only CET बचा है. So that day I gave the first CET का mock and I had a score of 116. So because I had prepared for NMAT, that's why it was not a very bad score. And after that, it was all about improving the score and getting into the top ranks. So as I mentioned before, also my main focus was to get in the top ranks in each and every mock which I give. That was the main focus. No number was not necessary for me, because I remember in few of the difficult mocks, even after scoring 116 or 120, I was in the top ranks. So there was no particular number in my mindset, but just getting the max out of your marks.
Okay, that sounds good. So I think we've come to an end to the question that we had planned, the question that we had. So if you have any other questions, you can put it in the chat now. Just one other thing that we wanted to do, since we've always been talking about how shortcuts are important for us, just to show you guys what these shortcuts would be like. There's just something that we want to show you guys. So if you guys can see my screen, Vidhan, you can take it forward from here now.
Yeah. So people, these three questions are, you can see two quadratic equations and you've been asked to compare the roots. So I would ask you all to just try to solve this. We give you 4-5 minutes. Take your time, try to solve this, and we'll get back to you with the shortcuts.
So in the
What are the
meantime, you guys
answers
can
we
start putting the questions in the. We can start asking questions as well. So we'll answer those as well. Just one thing we want to talk about is that these questions, if you've not seen these questions, don't worry about it. There's still time to prepare and to do it, and so there's nothing to be scared of. These are pretty easy questions, as you'll see. And 4 to 5 minutes will not be required for this. Just wait for a while, you'll come to know.
Yeah, we just want to prove you something, so just try to solve this in the way you can.
Yes.
And also, like this is an important topic for the CET because generally 5 marks of quadratic equations are asked as per recent year trends.
Correct. So let's just take a minute and see what it's like. Just wait for a minute.
You can put
Then
your
when you
answers
start
in the
getting
comment
answers, you
section.
can like send it to us on chat over here.
Yeah.
So I think we have started getting 3-4 answers so far. Yeah, we can explain it to the rest, I guess. Vidhan, you want to take it forward from here?
Yeah. So as you all can see, we have this common thing in all these three questions. The coefficient of C, that is the constant, as in 35, 104, 12, 16, 61, 14. We know the coefficient is negative. I mean, not coefficient, but the sign. So whenever you find these kind of questions in which both the equations have negative constants, you just have to straight away mark the relation cannot be established. So the reason to that is because each of these equations would have two solutions, I mean two answers to x. One would be positive and one would be negative. So you cannot compare those positives and negatives because one positive would be greater than other equation ka negative and other equation ka positive would be greater than first equation ka negative. So you cannot compare this. And again, whenever you see negative in both the equation of C that is the constant, you just straight away mark the relation cannot be established. So I hope you all have understood this. If not, you all can send your queries to Anay.
Just one more thing I want to point out over here. We ourselves being Ankit and I, ourselves did not know the shortcut until today when we discussed this. So
normally these questions would take around 3 to 4 minutes or even 5 minutes to get the roots of the there are quadratic equations, right? So they have two roots. So x ka you'll have two roots and y ka you'll have two roots, and four equations you have to see ki which is bigger than if x is greater than or y, if x is lesser than equal to y. But basically there is a shortcut for this, and once you come to know this 5 to 10 minutes, you can directly solve this question within 20 seconds or 30 seconds or so. So you have saved around 10 minutes, right? So you can utilize this. So मेरा भी वैसे ही था, like verbal I was giving 10 minutes. I did not know these kind of shortcuts. So the reason I could extend my time in verbal from 10 minutes to 30 minutes was getting used to these kinds of shortcuts and solving questions within a limited span of time. So shortcuts do really help.
Correct.
So just in case people don't know, ax square plus bx plus c is the basic equation of a quadratic equation. And the c that I was referring to was this c in ax square plus bx plus c. So whenever it is negative, we just have to mark cannot be determined.
Yeah. So a lot of people are asking where these shortcuts are available. So just okay. What if constant positive? So I think just to reiterate, if the constant value is positive, there are different rules that you have to follow in that. This is only for this case that it becomes very easy. But the thing is, this case is very common. You'll find this case many times, and just mark it and go. So that's how it helps. Now a lot of you have been DMing us, have been sending us emails, queries about where we get all these shortcuts and what we can find. What we've realized through our prep is that it is all scattered. It is completely, if you Google and wherever you look for it, you won't find one place where there is everything available. So, and even if you find something, you'll find things that you don't get, that you can't apply in the final exam as well. For example, Harsh found this formula for compound interest and simple interest in the third year. Now, no one's going to ask you what the third year is going to be like. You'll probably get one question in one mock. You might have one question like that, but you aren't going to have it every time. So knowing that one formula like that is not what is going to help you. So in order to help all the students out, in order to help increase the preparation, what we're thinking of doing and what we're working on right now is to release a short course on shortcuts, tips and tricks, something like a crash course for CET. So we're kind of working on that. We're recording the webinars, we're recording the videos and all. We're working on that, and we'll be telling all you guys about it. So please join the Telegram group if you want the link which someone's asked for. So you can either DM us on Instagram, or we'll put it on the chat as well after this is done.
Or Facebook as well.
Or it's on our Facebook as well. So on Instagram, our ID is the topper percentile, the_topper_percentile, or the top percentile, sorry, the _top_percentile. So please find out over there, whatever it is, just join the Telegram group. We'll be keeping you updated on everything, the price, everything that we'll be doing. So just stay tuned for that. I think it's what we're trying to do is that we are going to give you what is needed for becoming faster, and what, through our experience, what we've learned, exactly what is required. So just stay tuned for that. We'll come back to all of this.
And the whole idea of this team that we have formed is because all of us have different core competencies. Like, I know for a fact that Harsh is very good at quant. Shreekanth has a few DI tricks up his sleeve and a few shortcuts that he had taught me during my CET prep that had helped me a lot. Aditya Sridhar is a master at visual reasoning. I mean, he has some insane ways of solving fast those visual reasoning questions. Vidhan and Anay have great ways of solving. I mean, Vidhan showed me one amazing way to solve puzzles of circular types, which you can solve linearly. And even Anay is very good at, those logic type of questions, those single type logic questions and those puzzles, and even logical reasoning as a whole.
So
and
what we've
I'm
done
not
over here,
praising
go ahead.
I mean, I'm not praising myself, but I do have a good understanding of verbal and the critical reasoning aspect of it. This whole
Considering he's talking about verbal, he is praising himself just to put it out there.
Because he helped me a lot for the verbal.
Yeah, so that's the whole idea, that we formed this team with diverse core competencies, and we thought that we could help you all as aspirants for CET 2021.
Correct. So just stay tuned for that. We'll be giving you updates once we've finalized everything, the price, where it'll be available. We've not finalized everything. Just stay tuned for that. We'll keep you updated. But it's going to be a really good product. So just stay tuned for that.
Yeah. So the important part here is that you might find some of these tricks, and on the internet you'll find some coaching classes or someone saying this trick is good or this trick you can solve faster. But what we are trying to do is getting you the tricks that we have applied in the CET, which were useful for us during our preparation and which worked on the D-Day, that's helped us score a 99.99%.
Correct.
So obviously for those who had an attempt before, these were the tricks that helped us elevate our score to this level. So that's what we're trying to do here.
Correct. Makes sense. Should we go to the questions now? The questions that they've asked. There are a lot of them that I can find over here. So let's just go through it as fast as we can. Yeah. Okay. So to start off, we are also taking questions on the earlier question that we had. So I'll just give me a second. Is it possible to change college if you score well in CET? You can. So it's not,
yes,
you can always take it again. So that's not an issue.
In fact, this year we have a 99.99 percentiler who was in some other MBA college, but then he prepared, he'll get into his dream college now. So yeah,
Correct.
that's absolutely possible.
So don't worry about that. That's not going to be an issue. There's a question over here about the difference between CAT and CET. So one major difference, as I've already pointed out, is that there are no sectional. You don't need a sectional score. You can get 0 in abstract. You can still get first rank, which has happened in the past. I'll just point out there's been a topper who has marked all abstract questions randomly and got rank 1. So there's nothing like that. You just have to. There's nothing like that. So in CAT, you need a sectional cutoff. There's a sectional cutoff for each and every college, as I understand. In CET, there's nothing like that. The amount of the way you have to solve questions is very different. I think Harsh will answer this best. So in CAT, you have a more structured approach, as Vidhan was also saying that in RC, you have to look at each and every option, see the exact meaning between two words. In CET, there's nothing like this. Just there are a couple of these things. As I go through the questions, I think everyone else can answer. I'll just take a minute. So Harsh, Vidhan, you guys can take over.
Sure. So basically, from my experience, I can see that CAT usually have 2 to 3 concepts which are interlinked, and then you have to identify what's going on where, and then finally solve. But for CET, the thing was there is just one concept. You just have to identify what is it, apply the correct thing, get the answer, move on to the next one. That's the entire idea. That's the entire difference. Vidhan, you want to add something?
So
No, I think what you're saying is absolutely right, and couldn't add anything to this.
yeah,
Couldn't agree more.
And it's also the number of questions. So in one you have, I think, 100 questions, and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the difference is that in one you have 100 questions, the other one you have more than that, right? And basically, if you want to have a KPI or key performance index or a metric for CET, it's marks per minute that you are scoring. Because you have 150 minutes, you've got 200 questions. That's a lot of load, and it will take some practice, to get to that 150 mark of attempts or 170 mark of attempts. Because when you reach there, that is when your score is going to increase.
correct. So
Yeah,
someone's
and
asked a question.
somewhere I
Yeah.
also feel that if someone has thoroughly prepared for CAT or XAT, I think it's really going to help you with CET as well, because you already have those concepts. You already know those concepts. It's strong. Now you just have to tweak it a little and just know a few shortcuts. And the questions in CET are also very easy when compared to CAT. As really
I'm getting
not a task.
Yeah, I'm getting a few questions saying ki how to start with the basics and how to, go about the daily practice. So I'll say ki for the basics, CET is a really not a difficult exam. It is a medium level ka exam. So you should just go and there are 200 questions, right? So solve all the 200 questions first and see how many you can solve. If you without any time limit, so majority of them you can already solve it, but the major importance over here is ki which shortcuts do you actually know. Like as we have said ki a question ko we can solve in 10 different ways, but kis way mein karna hai, that is the most important part. So for the basics you should just try solving the mocks first, and uske baad mein try to look for the shortcuts. And as Anay, Sridhar and Ankit have mentioned, they're preparing a course where they are going to particularly show you which kind of shortcuts should you use to score good marks. And also they're working with TestFunda, so maybe that's a really good course which they're doing.
We'll give you all the information that is there. I'll look for the Telegram link and put that here. Just give me a little while. But why don't you guys just DM us on Instagram? That'll be easier for now because I don't have the link. So I'll just put that as well. Another question that we have over here is the make or break puzzle section. Just to cut it short, there is nothing like a make or break puzzle section, as Aditya has already told us. It is about strengthening each and everything that you can. And you have to practice puzzles. It's not that you don't have to practice puzzles. One thing that helped all of us solve puzzles faster was just practice. You keep at it, think about it. You have to think about the facts that they've given in a more logical manner, in the sense that you have to look for words that are connecting, or different things like that. Like if you see us solving a few puzzles, which we'll be holding webinars for that as well. When you see the way we solve puzzles, I think it is more about finding the words that match and putting all the information together to reduce the number of cases. So I think that is one thing. We'll show you how to go about that. We'll be doing all of that in our in webinars and in our courses. So just give us some time for that. One question that I've seen 1,000 times is, how do you reduce the fear of quants?
Yeah, so I'll try to answer this one.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are asking ki, and also in the poll we have around 50% of people saying ki quants is difficult. So if you just look at it from the upper view, quants mein there are 50 questions. In that 50 questions, around 20 questions are DI questions. In DI you only need to good info about percentages and approximations. Iske alawa you don't have to do anything. उसके बाद में 5 क्वेश्चंस आर क्वाड्रेटिक इनइक्वालिटीज जिसका शॉर्टकट वी हैव मेंशन्ड अभी, एंड उसके बाद 5 डेटा कंपैरिजन एंड 5 नंबर सीरीज, and in all there are only 12 to 13 questions of quants in the whole 200 questions, और उसमें भी 10 questions are from arithmetic, basically comprising of time and distance, profit and loss and mixture allocation, बस. So there are no like 50 quant के question है and उसके बिना होगा ही नहीं. Only 12 quants का question are there in the whole 200 paper. So I believe even if you leave that section, I won't suggest to leave, but that is really negligible, right? So I don't get ki quants क्यों difficult है. It is not difficult if you look at it properly and analyze it properly. सिर्फ 12 से 13 questions ही है quants के. So I won't say it would be the difficult section. This was my lookout.
That's fair. I think another
So people just get scared after CAT because CAT quant is so tough, and they think quant is in CET also, and they take the same fear from CAT to CET. But as Shreekanth mentioned, the weightage of actual quant questions, arithmetic, mixtures allegations, and all these time and work questions are very less. 12 to 15 questions in the whole 200 marks. So don't worry. And even in that, around half of them will be solved by some shortcuts or tricks. So don't worry about CET quants is all I have to say.
Yeah. Just one thing, keep in mind that calculations have to be fast. So just keep working on that. If you're able to do it, I don't think there's any problem that you're going to have. Just keep working on that and stop saying that there is a fear of quant. That is the first thing. If you keep saying you have a fear of quant, you will never get over that fear of quant. So just to give an example for this, my sister, she is currently a student in Jamnaral Bajaj, and in 2019 CET, she scored rank 23, I think 23 or 24, one of the two. And she used to be in this position where she did not like quant in the 10th standard, throughout life more or less, till she always disliked quant. But when it came to taking this entrance exam, she was confident that she could do it because she stopped letting that be an excuse. She stopped letting that come to her head that that this is going to be something that is going to make a difference to her prep. So she made sure that it's not going to be her weakest section, and it was just what was in her head. That's what made the difference. So yeah, just stop saying that you're afraid of quant. I think that makes a very, very big difference in your prep. Another few questions that I found here are difficulty level between CET and NMAT. It's not very different, but it is. So in NMAT, you have a fixed order, fixed timing per section. In CET, there's nothing like that. Secondly, NMAT questions have more time per question based on the section you are in. And I think this year NMAT has changed into an adaptive platform. So please just check with the latest updates. We won't be knowing about that. But basically,
it's an adaptive one now this year.
Yeah. So CET the LOD is going to be a little easier, but I'm not saying it's going to be extremely easy. So you have to prepare for it. You have to work for it. One other question that I think we've skipped is the number of hours that we put in. So if you can just get a rough figure from each one of you, we'll start with Harsh.
I really don't believe there's a magic number in terms of number of hours. My approach was simple. I've got 45 days. Any hour, any time of the day I'm free, I'm going to put in that efforts to get into my dream college. I would really suggest everyone के number of hours के चक्कर में मत पड़ना. ऐसे कोई someone will tell you 4 hours, someone will tell you 8 hours, but it might be less, it might be more. The thing is, if you want to get somewhere, then you have to put in every ounce, every minute of your time or life into it. And that's how it's possible. I mean, that was my approach. There are different views, obviously.
Correct. Aditya?
So obviously I had to manage with work. So on the days I had work and I could manage only 2 hours on a weekday. And I used to make it up on the weekends with 5 hours per day. But there is no number of hours or a magic number. It depends on your level and if you're using the right approach to study. If you're giving 8 hours and not studying well, not optimizing the time, just sitting and looking at books, obviously it's not going to help. And so don't do that. Don't study for 8 hours. What's right for you. मतलब अंदर से पता होता है कि मैंने आज इतना पढ़ा है कि नहीं. If I have studied enough, you have to be satisfied when you go to bed that day कि I have studied enough for today. You have to have that satisfaction.
I think that would be answering all our questions. I don't think there's a better way to put it. At the end of the day, you have to be happy with what you do, and if you really want it, you'll be putting in a lot of efforts. So I think
Netflix or Amazon Prime बंद कर दो 2-3 महीना and focus on your exam.
Yeah, you have to do a couple of these things. I think Ankit had a very, I think Ankit had a very structured plan. So if he can just tell us the number of hours that he was putting in. Yeah.
So I wasn't working, right? So and I did not have any other commitment. So I had a very regulated and structured plan in place. I would study for about 2 to 2.5 hours in the morning or afternoon, and then again 2 to 2.5 hours at night. And this following this regular schedule really helped me, keep in touch with the CET prep. As in, because I did not have any other commitment, I wanted to be sure that I'm studying on a daily basis and I'm not creating any gaps in my prep. And I think that helped me a lot.
Okay, that's fair. I think it's tougher for a person who doesn't have a constant.
Right.
The motivation is more important for a person like that. So that's really true. There's a question over here which I'm pointing out because of how it's written. So, how to score maximum marks in English with minimum efforts in it? I think again the minimum effort part. I think you need to change that. You have to put in efforts. Shreekanth will be there for you when you need minimum efforts. That's for sure. He will guide you till the end of. All of us will be there with you till the end of the prep, the course and everything. But I think the minimum prep has to go out. You have to put in efforts if you're working hard and if you want to get in here. So it's just that one thing. And to work on verbal, yeah.
There is a funny question ki which tukka had you all marked? Like what were your options? Because I marked option E.
Same. I used to mark option E just because it is much more closer to the next button.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
my logic.
See, that's how engineers
As many
think. That's how
seconds as
typical
can.
and that's how computer science engineers think. What is the shortest distance to do something to optimize every step
exactly.
that is there? But I don't think it makes a difference as to what we have marked.
But what were your? Everyone would like to know कि अंकित का क्या था?
Ankit का
का वाला
बता दे।
option.
So
अंकित
I
का
went.
most
I
secret
went
reveal.
option C. Yes, that's my secret. I went with option C, and that was fixed. Like हर mock में मैं option C mark करता था. So don't try in this. You don't need to experiment and see एक
Yeah,
mock
yeah, yeah.
option A किया
Right.
दूसरे में option B है. उससे कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. Just choose one option.
And
Fix that.
please don't come back to Ankit, C mark करके कि I haven't scored 20, 30 marks. You told me to mark C.
See guys, bottom line is that 99% is your efforts, 1% is your luck. तो luck के ऊपर तुम भरोसा मत करो. वो 99.99 या ऐसा touch करना है, then it's always about your efforts.
In fact, someone had asked a question asking how many were your genuine attempts. Since you've brought luck into the picture, our genuine attempts would be the one where our accuracy is hard work, is a proper hard work. What is left is what our tukkas were. So just to put that there, I think my genuine attempts would have been around 160, 170 at the end of it, if I'm not wrong. I think all of us,
Same.
if everyone's agreed, then
same.
170 out of 300 questions we were doing genuinely. And out of that, if we've scored 150 or 140, so our accuracy you can judge from there. And then tukkas, so we were really not putting that into. That is not what put us there. What has got us there is the amount of work we put in. It is actual solving. So just remember that. Guys, you'll be going through all the questions. So just a couple of things. Verbal prep. I think for CET, it is grammar. You need to know the rules properly. A lot of rules and all. I think Shreekanth, if you want to, Ankit. They've asked Ankit sir. So Ankit, let's go.
We'll be guiding them on in further webinars about different sections. And how to tackle
correct.
them.
Also, people are asking how to analyze a mock, and I had prepared a PDF also, so we can, like, if you guys stay tuned, in the next webinar we'll make sure to do that also.
So we are planning to keep some further webinars also, consequently in consequent weeks. So all those things which wouldn't be covered right now, we'll probably take it over there and in the subsequent ones.
Correct. So we'll make sure to add a lot of this. We'll especially keep something on mock analysis because we know that makes a big difference, as Shreekanth has also pointed out. So there's definitely going to be one on mock analysis, and it'll be exactly like how today's was. So don't worry about that. We are here to help you guys. So don't worry about that. Then over here, questions from which topic should be skipped in the exam. Now here, I think this depends on your personal thing. So in my mock analysis sheet, I had kept a history of whichever questions I was attempting and how much I was getting in each type of question. So I knew exactly which question I was getting wrong. And based on my own analysis of what my mocks were like, I would attempt the next mock. So for example, since everyone's mentioned critical reasoning, I'll have you guys know that critical reasoning is bad for everyone. It is not a very fixed thing. I suppose Ankit is not nodding his head, so he disagrees with me. But critical reasoning is something that is bound to be lower accuracy. So that was something that I would always keep later on. Like, I would probably attempt that towards the end or think more about it. If anyone else has any other answers about this, but I think you have to do it yourself. It's more about a subjective thing that if you are bad at something, or if you are not as fast at something, not really bad, just not as fast or not able to score enough in the same amount of time, you should do it later. So if any
So we
else
have
has
a
any answer,
question over here with which says like which books you all guys were using during your preparation. So I think we are just using coaching classes books, right? And I'm sure we didn't need 5-6 books for a single section like for cons or LR.
So I
So
think
you don't
after
have to go
yeah.
with
Yeah,
continue.
yeah. So after a point, what was happening was that once we've got the concepts right, it was only about solving mocks. It was not about concepts after a point. So once you've cleared your concepts, which will happen through either in fact, through mocks you can solve a lot of concepts. You can learn a lot of concepts through the solutions of mocks. So I think mock taking is a great way to learn more as well. So it need not be books that you refer to, because a lot of books won't be covering all the things that are there. They might not cover shortcuts or different ways of solving it. It will be all traditional ways of solving things. And that is only going to get you to a
And
certain point.
these days you get sectional tests, topic-wise tests on
Correct.
your portal, so you don't really need books for your preparation. It's just the concepts which you learn in your coaching classes. And if not, you can even use YouTube.
Correct.
So Sanket had a question.
Yeah.
Is joining a coaching really important? So to answer this, I would say it is not important and it's not mandatory. To give an example, in the second attempt, I didn't have time to go for a coaching class. And in my first attempt, when I had enrolled in a coaching class, I didn't go for lectures. Because in the starting में थोड़ा जोश रहता है, you go for 5-6 lectures, फिर मन नहीं रहता है lectures attend करने का. So it's not important, but definitely give mocks regularly. Mocks are the most important thing, more important than books or more important than attending coaching classes. Mocks is the most important thing.
That's fair, I guess. One thing over here that I found was that someone's asked, how do you cover all the questions in the paper? And as discussed, we did not attempt all the questions in the paper. We don't have to. I mean, 170 was what we were doing. So your aim should not be to attempt all 200 questions, like to actually attempt all 200 questions. It should be just to do as many as you can. Critical reasoning, fear of math, time management. Again, time management. Just keep a track of what the question was and how much time that was going. I think that was about it. Let me just see if there are more questions over here. If you guys can find any questions, please let us know. There's something that you can see.
Someone is asking, what is more important, mocks or daily specific practice? So in my opinion, first of all, you take your mocks. Like if you have already done your basics, then take your mocks, analyze it thoroughly, then find out those topics in which you require daily practice. So there is no substitute. You'll have to do everything, but then that should be the order, I believe.
Correct. Did you guys panic while solving mocks or on the D-Day? I think that's why you take mocks, so that you don't panic on the D-Day. So
Right.
I think that is how I would answer that. So the Telegram link that is there, I'll put it in the group, but I think the setting is I'll try putting it in the chat as well. But the easiest thing would be to just open it on Instagram. I think we put our link over there as well. That'd be the easiest to do. Again, just to remind you guys, the ID is the_top_percentile.
Amaya is asking that my CET portion is still not complete, but should I give my first mock now or should I wait for the portion to finish?
I think it's high time to take a mock. If I would say just take a mock. You can still complete your portion. Since you've done a little bit, I think you can take a mock. But you have to keep at it. You have to do the preparation again.
At least you'll know how the
at
least you'll know how the level is and continue.
Alright, so basically, if your portion is still not complete, this is the perfect time to practice how you are with your ego, because there'll be some topics that you know and you'll be tempted to solve them, but then you have not studied them yet, right? So this is where you can practice to identify questions that you know and move on to the next one without wasting time in any of the questions that you have not yet studied. So yeah, this is probably what you should do if the entire portion is not complete.
Yeah, agreed. And definitely give a mock. It's very easy after giving mock to understand which topics you don't know. So you can go back and then study that.
Yeah,
So,
you will know better what questions are coming. Like for a person who's taken CAT and come for CET, everything is going to be new. All the question types are going to be new. There's going to be grammar. Logical will be completely different from the traditional DLR that is there. So it's going to be very different for you. So you have to take a mock to see what the question types are. That's
and you don't have to get demotivated with it.
With the score, yes.
Because
So leave the
this is
score
your
out of
first
it.
mock.
Yeah.
I'd like to reiterate one more thing over here. A lot of people are asking कि practice कैसे करना है and what were sections were tricky, what were hard. So I feel कि practice and the tricky part you can do it yourself. Like you can solve the questions regularly, वो सब हो जाएगा. But if you see getting a 99.95, people are only around 40 people who get that score. But there are more people who have the similar level of intellect and similar level of practice done. So what's important? What's the difference between 51 rank and 40 rank wala banda? The difference is basically shortcut. How do you apply the shortcut? So I'm just reiterating कि shortcut कितना important है. So if a person gets 99.83, you can't say कि अरे ये बंदा तो topper नहीं है, इसको like अच्छा marks नहीं आया. He is a topper and he has got a really good score. But the difference is 99.99 वाला जो people है, they use particular shortcuts कि how to like solve a question in the D-Day exam में कैसे solve करना है. And also I think these guys are compiling a course of that. Like मैंने भी while I was preparing, there were thousands of shortcuts in YouTube available already. So कौन सा exam में करना है किसको पता है. So also you should make a group of people with whom you are preparing. So मेरे साथ अंकित था. So Ankit and I were going about कि ये shortcuts use करके मैंने verbal में आज इतना score किया. कल let's see कि कोई दूसरा shortcut से easily हो सकता है क्या. So बहुत analysis करके they have made this shortcut का product. So that is something which you should really focus on कि shortcut कौन सा use करना है exam में, क्योंकि है तो बहुत सारा है.
Thank you for that. Poco F1 has asked, till when will you launch the crash course? We are working on it right now, so I think in 2 to 3 weeks we should be done with it. And for whoever's asked the price, we promise you we're going to keep it as low as possible because we know what students are going through as well, and we have been there. So we'll be making sure the mocks are also available at the cheapest cost possible. So just wait for all the announcements to come. We really understand what you guys are also going through, so we'll be working with you till the end of this. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, so for mocks, obviously it's very important. So we'll be partnering with TestFunda.
Yeah.
And it will be an exclusive price that is cheapest in the market. Like you won't get it for cheaper. TestFunda
Yeah,
for
definitely.
cheaper. So we are just working and in talks for that price. So please stay connected with us on Instagram or Telegram, and do plan to join the future webinars.
And the Telegram group would be a better option to stay because we'll be conducting a lot of polls over there as to what our next webinar should be. So we'll be able to help you guys better. So just, I'll send the link. I'm sorry, I'm not able to send the link right now, but I'll send it. I'll send it across. Please message us on Instagram as well. We'll be there to help.
Or you can even email us if you're having any
Correct,
other
yeah.
issue. You can even email us on our email ID.
Yeah, so
Email,
that
DM.
is the top percentile 99@gmail.com.
Right.
So it's
Now
our
there's
mail.
one more interesting question over here.
Do let us know how you all felt the webinar as well.
Yes,
We'll be putting
please.
up a poll as well on Telegram, I think.
So
ask.
one more interesting question. What was the source of motivation for you throughout your journey? So I think for me, it was I knew one person who had scored that much and I knew that person pretty well. So
Right.
when you have someone to look up to, and I'll honestly say this, when I came to know that she had topped the test, I was like, oh wow, if you can do it, even I can do it. And that is when the efforts start, coming in. So I believe now right now over here, we have 151 people. When we started, there are around 170 people. So you 170 guys have us as to someone to look up to, and we are there with you to help you out. So probably if we can do, and from today's talk, you guys know we are pretty regular guys. It's nothing like we are Einsteins or something. If we can do, so can you. So that was the motivation from me. For Anay, I believe it was her sister because
My
she
sister,
made
yeah,
it.
exactly, yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say that I had the same thing, that I had a story right in my house who had achieved the same thing. So I had very little for, the motivation in me that you can do it as well. But we are trying to extend this to you guys as well by being there with you and helping you guys here. So, so the mock
one more
analysis
question is there.
questions, yeah, just one second.
So
The mock
does
analysis
your
questions that are
your
there.
crash course have mocks? So as said earlier, we are planning to launch a crash course, and with that, we are also going to partner with TestFunda to provide the mocks at the cheapest available prices.
TestFunda's
So,
own mock. We are providing TestFunda's own mocks.
Yeah. So the ones that we had taken last year, the same providers will
same
be
ones.
putting them this year. So we really like their mocks as well, as they've also mentioned. Someone's asked, can CET RCs be solved without completely reading the passage? We wouldn't recommend that, but I know people have done that. But
Yes.
it's better to read it
Can
fast and attempt it. It's more
But
like
there
answer
are there
following.
are there are some tricks and ways of even making your reading faster, and then we'll be discussing that in further course of time.
Yeah, Abhishek Joshi has asked my question to Ankit sir. Weaken verbal. Any chances to increase verbal using tricks? As he has said right now, that's again the thing.
Absolutely.
Any daily practice routine you followed? I think all of us had it. We were every day solving a lot of questions. It was throughout. I think we've not spoken about this, but I had a daily thing. Like every day, I used to solve puzzles, some quant questions, some traditional logic questions. We had something like that. I think all of us had something like that at least. I think Harsh also mentioned this earlier. We had a daily thing. We had to follow that.
And yeah, just one more point on the motivation part. I mean, your whatever your hard work, how much ever you do, it's going to give dividends. Once you get in a great college, that brand, and especially for us, we all were targeting JBMS, and like there is enough motivation to join JBMS given the people who have passed out on JBMS, the alumni. Obviously, it is famously known as the CEO factory. So just imagine what kind of platform and what brand that has. So it is completely life changing, and always keep that in mind when you don't feel like studying or don't feel like giving a mock. Always think about this.
So I'll just give an example over here. Like apart from what I spoke about in terms of motivation, this is what I used to do. I have like just above my study desk, I've got a writing board. I used to write in big bold letters the college I want to get into or the percentile I want to score. You know, whenever you sit for studying or whenever you are just in your room or wherever, when you see that thing, that inspiration should kick in. And that is how, you know, we speak about the kick. That is the kick for me. So probably everyone would have some sort of things where, you know, that is motivating them, right? So just find out what is working for you and stay motivated, because a lot of people, if you're starting from CAT, then by the time CET comes, you are just bored of it and you are like frustrated because not every test is going to go good. And it's like, it's just a hectic business, right? So the thing is, you have to push yourself every day, every consistent day.
Correct. Guys, whoever's asking for the link, this is our Instagram page, and this is the Telegram link that is there. This one that is there. So please just go here and join the group. We'll be over there and we'll be doing a lot of polls. So you'll be updated with everything that is there using this link that is there. So this is our ID on Instagram. Please send us a DM over here with whatever doubts you'll be having. We, in fact, solved a lot of them already. So whatever is that, please just stay connected with us. We'll be keeping everyone updated with everything. So just, yeah, that's the one. I'll go back to it if needed, but yeah, it's the top underscore percentile. Let me just see if there are a few more questions. I think we should come to an end to it now, but let me just see if there are more questions, a few more questions that we can answer. See, we'll be doing a lot of these questions again later because I know there's a lot that everyone has to ask.
We're getting a lot of section specific questions and
yeah,
so we'll definitely have webinars for specific sections. We'll have webinars for mock analysis. So definitely that's in the plan. Do stay connected so that you get the updates. And as mentioned, we'll also be partnering with TestFunda to give their mocks at the cheapest price. And you'll also get to know about our course, which will be launching in about 2 weeks.
So there are questions over here about the CET pattern changing. I don't think that's anything to worry about right now. That is not any of anyone's concern. When it comes, you deal with it at that time. Even I know the CAT pattern changed this year, so people deal with it. It's not a difficult thing to do.
And definitely we will be guiding you guys throughout. So if there's a pattern change, we will work with you all towards it. So don't worry about that. But since there is no pattern change announced, don't worry about it right now.
Correct. We'll be answering those questions as well. So we're trying to make it a more comprehensive place for all CET type of questions. So, we're able to help that out. CET 2022 aspirants, that's a very far away this thing. But I think you should take it this year as well.
You can start now for CET 2022 also. Because the earlier you start, the more spread out or the more calm your preparation will be. You won't have to crunch a lot of things, in 30, 40 days. So if you're starting now, that's great.
Correct. That makes sense. 1 second, just give me a few minutes.
Yeah, and as mentioned, we'll have a webinar for all India candidates also, because we know that it's absolutely necessary for all India students to get a 99.99 percentile in either CMAT or CET. So we'll have a webinar specific to that.
Correct. There's a question, after completing syllabus, what should you be doing? If you've completed your syllabus, focus on taking mocks and think about what went wrong last time. Figure out what went wrong in your earlier prep. Now you've got a very good idea about what we have done. And that we also have people who've taken for the second time. So they have also explained what was their difference, what they did differently, and think about what went wrong for you or on that day, or what was different that you can improve. So go for mocks. I think I'd say go for mocks, and again, the shortcuts that if you've not used them earlier. So that would make sense. Mentality on exam day, we're planning to keep a separate webinar for that again, because I think that's a separate topic altogether. Like we can go on for hours if you give us the chance, and we don't want to bore everyone, so we'll just try wrapping it up as soon as possible.
Yeah. I think we have covered all of the questions sent in the chat, and with that we can probably wrap up. And some of them are saying great session, thanks. So thank you to you guys too, and probably our efforts over here will be fruitful if you guys make it big. So yeah, get connected with us, and we really hope the very best for you. So yeah, all the best.
All the best to everyone.
All the best.
Thank you so
much for
much
joining, everyone. Do stay connected with us.
I'll just show you. I'll just put the Instagram thing again so that you guys know how to stay connected. This is our page. We'll be active over here, so please do stay connected with us. Thank you very much and good night. Hope you had a good time over here. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for inviting, guys.
Bye bye, people.
Bye. Oh yeah, thank you guys for being here.